Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome into Morning Invest on this Thursday, September 17th. So glad to have you here on the show. I'm Clayton Morris. This is the only morning news show that's not bought and sold by the big corporate elites, where we get to talk about the issues that I think matter to most Americans, the 99%, not the 1%. So welcome into the show. We've got a big show lined up for you today. I'm super excited about it. Coming up just in a few minutes here after we get through our headlines is our special guest today. He is a presidential candidate for the Green Party, Howie Hawkins. He is already in the house. He's going to be taking your questions there. There he is. Good morning, Howie. And we are going to be saying, we're going to be deep diving some questions with him on the Green Party, and what we're also going to ask him about what Democrats have been doing in a lot of these different states right now to try to suppress the vote. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about coronavirus cases going up today. We're going to show you the latest numbers on that. Plus, President Trump seems to signal that he wants this additional stimulus. And now it looks like he's boxed in Republicans on the Senate side, Mitch McConnell. It looks like the ball will be in their court to pass some sort of stimulus. In last night's press conference, where the president said, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for a bigger stimulus. Now it's going to be up to the Democrats to get something through. So that and more on today's show. Grover is in the house as well, passed out and ready to go, but we have got a big show. So welcome in, everyone, on this Thursday. I don't want to waste any time because we've got a special guest here on the show, but I do want to make mention of our Morning Invest newsletter. You can download and subscribe totally free by going to morninginvest.com. Go to morninginvest.com to subscribe, and that newsletter will be delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning, and you can read it in about 5 minutes. The news that I think is important that you're not going to get anywhere else. So again, subscribe. And by the way, today we're giving away our free hoodies on the show because we had a couple of winners from yesterday who referred a friend. And so, yes, we had a couple of great winners. So thank you so much for your support and referring a friend. We're giving away these the Morris Invest logo hoodie. So you should be receiving an email this morning or a little bit later today if you won. And you also referred a friend, we will give you a copy of this nice hoodie. So we just need to get your color and your address and all of that good stuff. Okay, well, I'm ready. We've got a big show for you today. So my wife, I asked her, she made me a delicious iced coffee, but she made a vat of it today. It's like a fishbowl of iced coffee. So thank you so much for everyone. Before we start, I want to make sure that our feed is looking good, and I always want to check in with our audience and see how many people are here right now. We've got thousands already joining us. Good to see everyone. Welcome. All right, good to see everyone. I was saying, yes, I said, look, if this stimulus passes in the way that it's currently structured, I would eat a house plant. I promised you I would eat a house plant if this compromise bill from the Problem Solvers Caucus actually passes the Senate intact. That was my caveat. It has to pass intact. Can't be some totally new thing. It's got to be their bill. I will eat a houseplant. Many of you have recommended different versions, like a cactus, a ficus. I'm leaning towards mint if I have to go that direction. We'll ask Howie Hawkins on that. He's, Green Party presidential candidate after all. Maybe he has some ideas that won't lead me to getting poisoned by a houseplant. All right, let's dive into it now. We're looking good. You guys can hear me great in the feed today. All right, thousands of you here today. So great to see all of you. Good. And Grover is ready for a great show. And like I said, we've got a jam-packed show for you. Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins is here. And I should mention, this was my sister. Not that I want to out her on this, but hey, she sent me this message right before the show. And I'm going to play it now. She's going to be embarrassed about it. But anyway, this was my sister sending me this message. I'll play it on my Apple Watch.
Are you serious? You're having Howie Hawkins on your show this morning? That's who I'm voting for. I'm so excited.
There you go. It's my sister. All right, so we've got a lot of questions for Howie, and we're going to be talking about these wildfires. We're going to be talking about what Democrats are pulling on the Green Party and so much more on the show today. Okay, without further ado, Grover is ready. Let's get this party started and start the old broadcast. And here we go. And welcome into Morning Invest on this Thursday, September 17th. I'm Clayton Morris. So glad to have you here. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. That's right. Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins is joining us today. He's going to be our main guest of honor on the show today. We're going to deep dive what Democrats have been doing. There he is. Good morning, Howie. We're going to get to him in just a few moments after we get to our headlines. But we're going to talk about what the Democrats have been doing to suppress the vote and trying to get the Green Party thrown off the ballot in a number of states. We're going to talk about these wildfires. We're going to talk about his overall campaign platform, and is there any common ground between the Green Party right now and Democrats, or are they just bought and sold by corporate elites? We'll talk about all of that and more. We're also going to talk about President Trump yesterday signaling and pushing really Republicans on this stimulus package. Now it's boxed in for Mitch McConnell. He is boxed in on this. They have not wanted to spend any money. 20 or so Republicans have not wanted to come to the table and do any sort of stimulus. Now the president is signaling that he would be in line more with this problem solvers caucus number of about $1.5 trillion and direct stimulus checks to the American people. So will the Senate bite on this, and where negotiations stand today? We will tell you all about that and more. I want to start the show today by telling you first about our newsletter. Just go there and sign up at morninginvest.com. We give away a lot of free stuff on there, our new mugs and sweatshirts and everything else. So subscribe to our morning newsletter, morninginvest.com. It is totally free to do. All right, I want to start with the 5 things that I think you need to know about from overnight, things that you missed. And let's start with coronavirus, and new numbers out this morning on these infections, ticking up slightly over the past week, thanks to scattered outbreaks in just about every region of the country. So where it stands right now, we have uneven progress, as you know. Like we see Arizona going down now, New Mexico going down, but now we're seeing upticks in West Virginia and Kentucky. So a few weeks ago, we had Texas going up, New Mexico going up, Arizona going up, California, now they're down. Now we have Wisconsin up 52%. We have Michigan up 19% in coronavirus cases. North Dakota up at 17%. Nebraska, this one's one to watch. Of course, they rolled back social distancing guidelines last week. Oklahoma is up as well. Texas up 10%. So again, the U.S. saw an average of about 37,000 new cases per day over the past week. The daily rate of new cases increased in 17 states and declined in 13. It's like a teeter-totter, back and forth. And also testing fell by over 6% from the week before. The U.S. averaged just under 695,000 tests per day, and there's no real clear geographic trend at work to say it's the middle of the country, it's the southern states, it's all a mishmash right now. I mean, this is America, right? When you have other countries that had a state system in place, and the government came in and said, we're going to do one thing, and this is how we're going to do it. You didn't have 50 states to deal with that all had a different plan. Some are saying no masks. Some are saying, hey, get rid of social distancing guidelines out in Nebraska. And others are being more stringent. So there's the tale of coronavirus at this hour. Let's talk about retail, the second big story that I think you need to know about. You may have noticed your local mall has been decimated. Local strip malls have been decimated. New data out about retail this morning, and U.S. consumers increased retail spending in August, but just a little bit for the 4th straight month. But it is low. I mean, this is showing that this recovery is sputtering right now. It's like that chugging along, very, very slow. So, people are not buying back to school backpacks and all of that stuff. This has dwindled down significantly. And also Yelp showing small businesses, they just released their data, shows 60% of businesses are permanently closed now since this pandemic started. This is troubling from Yelp. On Wednesday, they released their latest economic impact report, and it showed that as of August 31st, 163,000 businesses that have indicated on Yelp they plan to close permanently. That's a 23% increase since mid-July. Permanent closures have now reached 97,000 businesses. That's 60% of closed businesses that won't be reopening. Among them, hotels. Hotels, a major problem as well, and this is the latest data on the hotel front. Hotels are just being crushed. Several big-name properties have fallen behind in their debt or have closed altogether. Of course, we know that the country has overbuilt a lot of hotels in this country, so they had a lot of extra inventory anticipating additional travel. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen to these hotels? I mean, you can only turn so many of them into low-cost apartment housing. We'll see if that actually happens, but a lot of hotels permanently going out of business. The third thing that I think you need to know about today, the FBI released their most violent state statistics. Can you guess? I'm just going to ask everyone in the chat right now. Can you guess what you think is the most violent state in America? Let me check in the chat and see if anyone actually can get this. If you read the newsletter this morning, you might have actually gotten it correct. Did you read the morning newsletter? Because we included this story in that newsletter. But I wanted to dive a little deeper into it today on the show. Does anyone get it? Did anyone get it? Well, the answer is Alaska. That's right. Alaska is the state that is the most violent state in the country, according to the FBI. These are according to the Uniform Crime Reporting Program. Violent crime is up, defined as murder, non-negligent manslaughter, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. And in 2018, there were approximately 1.2 million violent crimes. That's a reduction and down by about 3% since 2017. But Alaska comes in at the top of this based on population. So 885 people out of 100,000. That's exactly what that number is for Alaska. And then the safest state in the country, go up to the beautiful state of Maine, is the safest state in the country, followed by Vermont, New Hampshire, Virginia, and Connecticut. They were the least violent of all states in the country. Was your state on the list? Let me know in the chat if you agree with that. Hey, any Apple fans out there? And we're talking Green Party stuff today, and one of the most environmentally friendly companies. We'll actually talk. I want to talk to with Howie Hawkins a little bit about that and what these big tech companies are doing to try to keep some of these rare earth minerals from getting back into the system and recycling programs, et cetera. And Apple always says in their press conferences that they go to great lengths to do that. We'll see if that's the case. Anyway, Apple just rolled out their brand new software today, or actually overnight. So anyone that has an iPad, an Apple Watch, an iPhone, you can now update your software to iOS 14. There's a bunch of new stuff on here, a lot of new privacy things that you want to put in place so people can't be snooping on you. You can do new home screen widgets as well, which is really cool. You can pin conversations inside of your text messages, so you can pin them right to the top for iMessages. A lot of really cool things. Inside the iPad, you can watch videos now that you don't have to just be watching the video. You can float it around on your screen, multitask, and do other things. But anyway, all you need to do is go to the Settings menu on your device, click on General, and then click on Software Update. Make sure it's plugged in, and you'll get the new iOS 14. So I always got to remind people, like my mom, I have to tell her, like, hey, Mom, it's time to update your software. She's like, oh, thanks for telling me. I didn't know about it. So here's my public service announcement to any of you iOS users out there, as I am one. And here's the fifth thing you need to know about today. People are stupid. That's right. Let's go down to what happened in this Target in, Florida. No, I'm sorry, Florida, but at any time we have one of these stories, you know it's going to be in Florida. And this is what happened with a group of Trump supporters rolled through a Target, and they were blasting the Twisted Sister song, We're Not Going to Take It Anymore, asking everyone there to take off their masks. Take off their masks. All these Trump supporters saying, get your masks off, we're not going to take it anymore. They had a speaker with them, and they were playing Twisted Sister. We're not going to take it. Telling everyone to take off their masks. You hear all these people saying, you idiots. This is the future of America? I sure hope not. My God. Well, Dee Snider, of course, the guy that wrote that song for Twisted Sister, took to Twitter and said, hey, idiots, you don't have the right to use my song for your classless, moronic move. Stop playing my music when you walk through a Target without your masks on, you idiots. There you go. Those are the 5 things I think you need to know about this morning. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a moron. And most of all, don't be a D. You know what I always say. So thank you guys so much for joining us. In a moment, we're going to be joined by Howie Hawkins here, Green Party presidential candidate. And yes, in the chat, James Figueroa says, bunch of fools. Yeah, this is the future of America. Of all the things that these kids could be doing right now, like worrying about the environment, trying to get the message out about voting, trying to do grassroots, get the vote out. No, instead they go walk through a Target, blasting, take off your masks. It's a good use. That's a really good use of time. Parents should be proud of them down there in Florida. All right, I just want to set this button here. We're going to bring in Howie. Okay. Get my notes up here. All right. All right. All right, welcome into Morning Invest. I'm Clayton Morris. You're not going to see this in the mainstream media, at least anytime soon, because they're just bought and sold by the big corporate elites. Today on the show, I'm thrilled to have another voice in this presidential race, someone who is a champion for green energy in this country and the environment and so much more, and that is Howie Hawkins. He's a presidential candidate of the Green Party, and he joins me now to talk about all the stuff that we've got to talk about today, certainly on the Democratic front, suppressing the vote, and so much more. We've got wildfires and hurricanes and everything else to talk about. Howie, thank you so much for taking time out this morning to join us here on Morning Invest.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, real pleasure. First, I got to start with the news of the day, Howie, and of course that is what is happening with Democrats trying to do to the Green Party in multiple states. If anybody was watching my show yesterday, I talked about how despicable this move is. This is something that Democrats always want to slam Republicans about, which is the suppression of the vote. And here they are, actively pursuing through legal matters and through court system and otherwise, trying to get the Green Party removed from the ballot in multiple states, and they've been successful. I want you to address this. Where do things stand right now, and are they going to be successful in other states?
Well, they just were successful in Wisconsin, and that was a travesty of justice. If you go read the opinions, the dissenting opinion said on the merits, the law and the facts, we were clearly qualified to be on the ballot. But this was precipitated by a Democratic objection. A Democratic member of the Wisconsin Election Commission presided over the hearing and wouldn't let us present our documentation to answer that objection, which forced us to go to court. So they precipitated the delay. And then the court sat on it for a week when they had all the evidence, and they asked for the election administration jurisdictions to tell them if they had sent out absentee ballots already. The news reports at first were that they had. In fact, they had not. But all this delay pressed them up against their deadline to get the absentee ballots out. And of course, the Democrats were saying, we're holding up, we're stopping mail-in ballots. No, it was their action that precipitated it. And then with the Republican majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, they delayed it another week. So when they decided, they said, we're too late and we're not going to look at the merits of the case. You're off the ballot, which is a travesty of justice. And, you know, the problem in Wisconsin is you got partisan hacks from both parties administering the elections. You know, what democracy does that? They don't do it in Europe, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, you name it. Maybe Russia and China, where the parties administer the elections. So you got a problem right there. And, you know, we were pawns in their chess game. And so the end result is the Democrats think, oh, now all these people are going to vote for them. And I think they're probably mistaken. First of all, 61% of Jill Stein, our presidential candidate in 2016, voters, according to the exit polls, would have stayed home if she wasn't on the ballot.
Right.
Only 25% would have voted for Clinton. And then my running mate, Angela Walker, a native daughter of Black Milwaukee, who was a leader in the Wisconsin uprising, bringing her transit workers union local in from Milwaukee to that workers uprising. And because of that and her other activism, they ran her for sheriff of Milwaukee County against David Clark. You know him, he's the black guy with the cowboy hat, nominally a Democrat, loves Trump. And he was telling people, don't call 911, get a gun. So she ran against him. She got 20% of the vote as an independent socialist. 67,000 people in Milwaukee voted for her. You think those people are happy? You think they're going to come out and vote for the Democrats that just knocked my running mate off the ballot? I think a lot of people are going to be disgusted, and they're going to want to not vote for the Democrats or anybody, although we will be write-ins in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin we did get knocked off the ballot. There's a case in Pennsylvania now where the Democrats are again blaming us for the delay, but they're the ones appealing the decision to put me on the ballot. So we just won a case in Texas that was for our down ballot candidates. There was a filing fee that we said was unconstitutionally high, and the court agreed with us, so our down ballot candidates are back on the ballot. There's a case in Montana, and it keeps flipping back and forth. It's, I think, on appeal. I'm not sure where it stands right now.
Right.
So
I mean, it's outrageous. How
we have lawsuits in some other states.
I'm just outraged by it because instead of Democrats trying to embrace major pieces of the Green Party platform, trying to be more inclusive, instead of this, they're trying to shut that voice out, suppressing the vote in multiple states. I think the most egregious is perhaps even in Pennsylvania and the other battleground state, of course, Wisconsin you just mentioned, but in Pennsylvania, they've been calling for mail-in ballots, right? Mail-in ballots, let's get it done. People in Pennsylvania would have had the opportunity to already start voting by mail, but they're delaying it because of this, just to kick you guys off the ballot.
Yeah, party suppression is another form of voter suppression. So when the Democrats tend to exercise and they say, if we get Greens off the ballot, we're going to get more votes. And like I said, I think they discourage people. They get more disgusted at the two-party system. And they want to blame the Greens for these presidential elections where it was suppression of the black vote that elected the losers of the national popular vote, George W. Bush in 2000 and Donald Trump in 2016. There were well over 100,000 black voters who were disqualified either by voter purges or not counting their ballots in Florida in 2000. The Green Party didn't do that. It was the Republicans. That's who the Democrats should be fighting on this. And then in 2016, take Detroit, Michigan. 75,000 ballots were never counted because the Republican Secretary of State sent in scanners that were defective into the Detroit precinct. So they had a discrepancy between the ballots that made it through the scanner and all the ballots in the precinct. So the Greens sued to have those ballots counted. And the judge said, you don't have standing because even if all those votes went to you, you couldn't win the election. The Clinton lawyers were in the courtroom observing, and the judge turned to them. You could have standing. Will you, support a recount? And they said, oh no, we're just observing. Now that's Detroit, mostly black, likely Clinton voters. And so they had their chance, and then the Democrats turn around and blame us. So, they're just not dealing with the facts when they go after the Green Party. They really need to worry about suppression of the black vote. Going back to Wisconsin, they got this photo ID, which is hard for a lot of black folks in Milwaukee who use public transportation. They don't have a driver's license, and it's one of the photo IDs they'd likely have to be able to vote. And in Madison, Wisconsin's liberal students likely to vote Democratic, but student ID doesn't count. That's the Democrats' problem in Wisconsin. It's not the Green Party.
Unbelievable. Well, I want to talk to you about some of the big issues, and I'm sure you would rather be talking about these issues and getting your message out there as a stark, a separate voice in all of this from Republicans and Democrats and libertarians. First of all, let's just talk about this. Why do in America other countries look at us and say, how in the world do you only have a two-party system? How is this possible that you operate really with only a two-party system that just buys and sells everything, runs everything with their corporate lobbyists? How is this possible? Will a third party be able to break through anytime soon?
I think so. One thing that we're advancing on is ranked choice voting. We now have it in 23 cities and counties, and now in the state of Maine, including for presidential electors. It's on the ballot in Massachusetts. And ranked choice voting means you just rank your choices in order of preference. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy. And if nobody gets a majority in the first round, they eliminate the last place candidate, transfer their ballots to their second choice, and continue that process till a candidate gets a majority of the votes. That way you can vote for who you really want without worrying about it might be helping the candidate you most fear. And I think with that, and then we extend that to legislative bodies with multi-member districts and using ranked choice voting, you would get proportional representation. So, for example, I ran for city council here in Syracuse one year, got 48% of the vote. But in a winner-take-all system, 48% of the people in my district got no representation because the other guy got all the power. So with proportional representation, it would be multi-member, so we're nearly 50%, we would have got half of the representation on council. So that, I think, is the game changer, and I think that's one reason why I think we're going to advance. Another reason is majority of people want a third major party. That's according to public opinion polls. More and more people are disaffiliating from the Democrats and Republicans and becoming independent. And then you look at the public opinion polling on the issues that the Green Party champions, like Medicare for all, like a Green New Deal, like progressive tax reform. So the rich pay their fair share and we can fund our social programs and environmental protection. Majorities are for that, and only Green Party's for that. So at some point, public opinion's got to translate into the political system. And with ranked choice voting, I think that can happen.
Well, I think we absolutely need it in this country, and we see the mainstream media, which is bought and sold by these sides as well, only getting those voices on the air. We see it constantly. That trickles right down from their corporate bosses, and that's why we do this show to bring voices that matter to our audience that don't have a voice, that aren't able to get this message out there. When's the last time one of the big corporate media shows wanted to have you come on their show? Fox, MSNBC, CNN?
They have not had me on yet. I'm getting some nibbles now from MSNBC and CNN. Actually, I'm speaking to a CNN reporter by phone later today.
Well, that's
that'll
progress.
Be the first time.
That's progress.
Yeah. It's late in the day, and my biggest beef in this whole election, ballot access is a real problem. That's all we've done since we got the nomination all summer. It's a battle.
Right.
But the bigger battle is getting our positions into the public debate. This is the most issueless, vacuous presidential campaign I've ever seen. It's like the Democrats are saying, Uncle Joe's a nice guy and Donald Trump's a bad meanie. And then Trump is saying, I'm the last guy standing between you and the hordes that are going to come down and burn your suburbs up. What about the climate meltdown, the COVID crisis, the inequality crisis, which has led to working class life expectancies in decline? And then, of course, the nuclear arms race, which the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has their doomsday clock closest it's ever been to midnight. Both parties are supporting the nuclear modernization program, which has destabilized the situation, and none of them talk about this issue. And it should be a top campaign issue. So that's the biggest frustration for me.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and that's why we do this show. And I want to thank you to all of our audience who watches this show and supports independent journalism here. I spent many, many years in the corporate media, and to be able to be here with no boss telling me what to cover, it's liberating to be able to get these issues in front of people. So thank you for joining us, Howie. Let's talk about, first of all, the stimulus and the American people. You heard me talking earlier. We're going to be doing a deep dive segment here on the stimulus in just a moment, but the American people are being crushed right now. And if you watch the mainstream media, if you listen to the White House, you listen to the corporate elites that are running the show, they're saying, look, we saw jobs number drop down to 8.4%, and that's great. They're not talking about the permanent job loss. They're not talking about the eviction crisis. They're not talking about rental assistance. They're just talking about Wall Street doing fine, Federal Reserve, and 8.4% on the unemployment number. Where do you come down on the stimulus? Do you think the American people need some sort of a universal basic income, additional stimulus checks? What do you see?
Well, and the other thing that they don't talk about is the labor participation rate is down.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that means if you say we got 8.4 unemployment, you're not counting nearly double that of people that used to work, would work if they thought they could get a job and don't work. So you're not counting unless you're looking for work. And these are people that would work if they thought they had a chance of employment. So yeah, I want to talk about an economic recovery package, not a stimulus package. When you look at stimulus in recent history, it's trickle-down economics. Either give tax cuts to the rich who are supposed to invest in new jobs. Instead, they don't invest in new productive assets that would create jobs. They invest in financial assets, which just rearranges who owns what we already have and further concentrates the wealth. And then just putting more money in the consumer doesn't deal with the kind of investments in new productive assets we need, particularly with respect to transforming our economy to clean energy and zero carbon emissions, which is a real emergency. And that's the Green New Deal I've been talking about for a decade. And I think that's not only the way for climate recovery, it's the way for a real economic recovery. With respect to a universal basic income, I think that's the quickest way in this emergency of the COVID crisis that we get money out into the economy so it can keep running. In the long run, I prefer a guaranteed minimum income above poverty, built into the tax structure, because it's a lot more expensive to give everybody, including Donald Trump and Warren Buffett and Steve Bezos, $2,000 a month when they don't need it. Yang's
Right.
$1,000 a month was, I think, $3.5 trillion. The guaranteed minimum income we're talking about at double the current poverty rate, because the current poverty rate is too low, is about $400 billion a year, much more efficient, and so you're not taxing the working class to send checks to Jeff Bezos.
What do you think? Why do you think there's such opposition to, well, at least among the right, and even among Democrats, on this Green New Deal? Why are they reluctant to sign on to this? What are the main talking points and arguments against it?
Well, from the right, it's that we don't have a climate crisis.
Right.
I mean, it's science denial. And I think from the Democrats, they're the special interests, the oil and gas industry, which in August 2018, the Democratic National Committee recommitted to taking money from, along with a quote unquote all of the above energy policy, which is a euphemism saying we're going to continue fracking the hell out of the country for oil and gas, and we're going to subsidize nuclear power, which costs 2 or 3 times more than most forms of solar and wind power. So it's a boondoggle. So I think they're compromised by the special interests. And I think, so what I like to say is Trump calls climate change a hoax, but the Democrats act as if it's a hoax. The climate policy in Biden and the Democratic platform this year is even weaker than they had in 2016. You got to read between the lines, but they say we're going to add carbon capture and sequestration to, well, they don't say what they're going to add it to, but what they're going to add it to is burning gas in gas-fired power plants. You can't do that economically without massive federal subsidies. So, the oil and gas industry is very happy with Biden. And
Right.
under him and Obama, we became the world's #1 producer of oil and gas, which
Right,
is
and we
not
saw
what the climate needs.
I mean, you just read Naomi Klein's brand new book. We just, see what happened with the BP oil disaster. I mean, President Obama signed off on those oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, and we had the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So that happened on President Obama's watch. Someone in the chat
And
says,
then they approved Arctic oil drilling
right.
after that.
So that how many watchdog groups are going to be able to be up in the Arctic and keeping an eye on it? At least in the Gulf of Mexico, we could see what was going on. There was a camera catching as it poured into the ocean, and we could actually see it. Just incredibly troubling. What do you say to those people that say, climate, clean energy, the idea of clean energy is a hoax, not economically viable? What would you say to that person?
Well, they haven't been following what kind of new installation the utilities are putting in. They are putting in now a lot of solar and wind because at this point going forward, it's the best investment. And you look at the costs, wind and solar are competitive with everything. Gas is about the same price, but gas is an environmental disaster. It's a climate bomb, and we shouldn't be going down that path.
I had a question from, in fact, my sister, who is a fan of yours, and she mentioned earlier that she's planning to vote for you, but she had a question on school lunches. She said, obviously the United States goes back and forth with Mexico being the fattest country in the world, the unhealthiest. Childhood obesity is through the roof. I mean, it's amazing. One of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we're having to deal with all of this processed food and garbage that our kids eat, and particularly at school lunch programs. What would you do about America's school lunch program to get real food, sustainable food into our lunch programs for our kids?
Well, it'd be part of our Green New Deal for agriculture, where we basically want to switch from corporate, industrialized, chemicalized agriculture. So we get corporate farming out, we get the working farmers back owning their own farms. We help them make the transition to organic farming, which rebuilds the soil and brings carbon out of the atmosphere back into the biosphere. So we provide parity pricing for all commodities. And then we develop regional marketing networks. And the schools is a good market for those farmers. So you get fresh produce and dairy and so forth into the schools. And that should be part of the regional planning so that we get more healthy food. Right now they go with the cheap option, which is this highly processed food, lots of corn syrup, lots of sodium, not good for children or anybody. So I think that's the way we got to go. And I guess the other thing I'll say is we got to provide technical assistance for new farmers. If we go organic, we're going to need about 1 million more farmers in this country. And I think a lot of those people are former residents of Mexico who are up here as immigrant workers, and they were forced off the farms largely because of NAFTA, and their American dream is to have a farm. So I think those people are here, and we need a program to get them on the land, and we should have a family farm policy so that farmers' production costs are covered so they can stay in business. Right now we're losing family farms, and you got Wall Street investors buying up farmland. And
Right.
Now we have a new version of the sharecropping we had, between the Civil War and the Gilded Age after the Civil War.
Right. Having to lease this land from corporate elites. That's more of what we need in this country. Ash, I asked for your questions from our audience. We got a lot of great questions from our viewers this morning. Ashley Rosink, sorry if I mispronounced that, says, what is your plan, Howie, for the pandemic and financial crisis if you're elected? What is your stance on social and racial inequality the country is currently facing? And how would you address that going forward?
Well, on the pandemic, the first thing we need is a federal program, not leaving each state to fend for itself. So we have adequate testing, contact tracing, there's a lot of jobs right there, and then isolating those exposed or to infection or infected, and that way suppress community spread of the virus, which they've done in other organized societies. I mean, right now, the two governing parties are presiding over a failed state. The COVID crisis makes that plain. And then we can go back to work and to school safely. So that's the first thing we got to do. And then in terms of the economic recovery, we mentioned a basic income to keep people going. We need rent and mortgage relief, and not just cancel or have a moratorium on rent and mortgage, but we need the federal government to make those payments for people that can't, so that all the businesses that depend on that rent and mortgage income, your community credit union, the small landlord, the little businesses that service property and maintain property. If we just cancel the rent, they're going out of business and more people are going to be unemployed. Ilhan Omar had a good bill on that didn't get into the so-called HEROES Act, which would have made those payments and also enabled the public housing sector and the nonprofit sector to expand, because it required anybody selling rental properties to notify HUD and give public housing authorities and nonprofit housing developers the first opportunity to take over those houses up for sale or those properties up for sale. So that's another thing we need. The unemployment insurance supplement is certainly needed because unemployment in most states is below poverty. We got to save the Postal Service for the election, have universal mail-in ballots. All that should have been funded last spring. I mean, we're getting late in the day for that. And then state and local governments. I mean, they're going belly up. And McConnell's idea that they should go bankrupt is, that means, like in my city of Syracuse, none of the pools open this summer. And then they finally got one of them open or two of them open by a GoFundMe thing online, so some of the kids could cool off during the summer. That's where the cities are at.
Yeah, but we can increase our military budget by 20% and continue to fight in foreign wars, but we can't open pools in our own backyards. This is despicable. Well, we can't afford that garbage. Give me a break. Lightworker asks this question, Howie. Lightworker, a longtime viewer of our show, wants to know, what is your plan for global warming and what can we do to save wildlife from poaching and trophy hunting? So global warming, obviously a hot button issue. It used to be fairly low on what voters' interest and where they major issues. Now it's risen to the top.
Well, I was the first candidate in this country to campaign for a Green New Deal back in 2010 when I ran for governor. And we've developed this program over the last decade. If you go to my website, howiehawkins.us, there's a detailed budget for an eco-socialist Green New Deal. And we say eco-socialist because we got to do what we did during the World War II emergency, when the federal government took over and planned 25% of manufacturing capacity in order to turn industry on a dime into the arsenal of democracy to arm the Allies against the Axis fascist powers. And we need to do a similar thing to defeat climate change. So we're talking about a lot of public enterprise and planning in the energy, transportation, and manufacturing sectors in order to transform not only energy production, but also manufacturing, agriculture, buildings, and transportation, so they are zero emissions. So the goal of this plan is zero or better negative carbon emissions and 100% clean energy in a decade. And we want that because that's what the climate science says. That last report from the International Panel on Climate Change said that we have a carbon budget of 420 gigatons before we blow past the 1.5 degrees Celsius rise in global temperatures, which is seen as a danger threshold. And we're emitting 42 tons, 10% of that budget every year. That was 2 years ago. We got 8 years before we use up that budget. So this is a real emergency. And they said, what about globally? First thing, the United States has got to set an example. This Green New Deal, it's a $27.5 trillion investment over 10 years. It creates over 30 million jobs. It will be an economic boom. And countries suffering now after in the COVID situation and other structural problems with the global economy, this is a way to put people to work building assets that we need. And with that example, hopefully we can persuade other countries. China is a real climate problem. They're emitting more carbon than we are now, and they're on a breakneck growth, basically mission. And Russia is just put put the first of 7 barges with 2 nuclear power plants on them to float out into the Arctic Ocean for oil and gas drilling. I mean, what could go wrong? And
right.
So, but until we set a good example, we don't have any persuasive power with those countries, let alone the Gulf states and the other countries that are a danger to the climate. So I think that's how we do it globally. And we spend, out of that $27.5 trillion, we spend $2 trillion on a global Green New Deal, helping other countries leap out of the 19th century fossil fuel age into the 21st century solar age. So that's how we go global with the Green New Deal.
If you're just joining us, joining me now is Howie Hawkins, Green Party presidential candidate. And Howie, obviously one of the big stories that everyone's talking about are these wildfires out west through California, Washington State, Oregon, into Utah, Nevada, for crying out loud. And people waking up this morning in San Francisco, Los Angeles, everywhere else, and there's soot all over their cars. They can't breathe. We've seen an uptick over the past century of about 3 degrees Fahrenheit or so. And climate scientists are saying that we are on a death spiral in the United States and around the world if we don't do something about this. But there's a lot of people that don't believe it and don't think that this is a valid conversation. And Ben Shapiro, who is a guy that loves to talk about facts, he took the climate change folks to task on his show just yesterday. I want to play what Ben Shapiro had to say about these wildfires and how this debate is unfolding and get your take on this. So listen to Ben Shapiro from his Ben Shapiro show.
What you cannot argue with any straight face is that climate change is the actual reason for the wildfires, or for the increase in the territorial spread of the wildfires. You cannot make that case. That case is absurd in the absence of mentioning any of the federal and state policy that has led to the exacerbation of the tinder that is available for these wildfires. It makes no sense at all. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the average temperature in the state of California over the past century has risen 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Not 15, not 20, 3 degrees Fahrenheit. That makes for some drier brush. But do you think that the massive wildfires that we are seeing today is more a result of a 3 degree Fahrenheit increase over the course of 100 years? Or do you think maybe it has more to do with the fact that federal and state policy have prohibited any sort of controlled burning that would have prevented all of these tindered areas from basically becoming a giant explosive device?
Howie, what do you say to Ben Shapiro that it's Forest Service management is the reason, nothing to do with climate change?
Well, he takes one fact and builds a whole argument around it without looking at any others. It's not either or. All the lightning strikes that precipitated many of these fires is due to, I grew up in California and I rarely saw lightning. You have more energy in the atmosphere now with heating, and 3 degrees Fahrenheit does make a difference. And, particularly on the extremes, they had over 120-degree temperature in Los Angeles the other day. So it's just taking one fact and running with it out of context. So I think, the climate scientists are saying, in California, they've had more drought. Now, yeah, the management of forests allowing more tinder has been an issue. It's been a discussion for a long time in the Forest Service, because some of those species depend on periodic fires. And if you don't let them run through, you do accumulate more tinder, which makes the fires more dangerous. So that's an issue, but it doesn't say that climate change isn't a contributing factor as well.
What can we do about these? What can we do about these wildfires? I mean, what can we do to stop this? And does it come down to fossil fuels?
Yeah, we've got to turn our climate assault around, which means very quickly stopping to emit greenhouse gases like carbon and methane, and then having programs to draw carbon out of the atmosphere. Because you look at projections like by James Hansen, who's the most prominent climate scientist in the United States. He's the one that designated 350 parts per million carbon in the atmosphere as the danger threshold. We're up to around 415. So we not only have to stop making it worse, we got to bring carbon back into the biosphere with afforestation, with rebuilding soils, which in industrialized agriculture are basically, they just hold the plants because it's the chemical fertilizers that nourish the plants instead of natural fertilizers in a living soil, and restore habitat. I think another thing is, we've got to look at where we build, and maybe we don't build in areas that are subject to wildfires. And same thing with flood zones. So I think that all has to be part of the picture. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding because a lot of buildings have been destroyed in these fires.
Well, Howie Hawkins is my guest today. We really appreciate you joining us here on the show. How can people learn more about the Green Party platform, more of what you're trying to accomplish with the Green New Deal? How can people donate and be a part of this movement?
Well, our website for the campaign, howiehawkins.us, is where you can find all of that. A lot of policy papers, that Green New Deal budget, and that's the only budget and the plan that's out there. The Democrats took our slogan and diluted the content, and then they didn't even come up with a plan, even though they sent it off to some think tanks. And so there's an article on the website about that. And you can donate and volunteer there as well.
Wonderful. My guest has been Howie Hawkins, Green Party presidential candidate. Thank you so much for joining us, Howie. I appreciate it. And good luck on the campaign trail. And let's see if the mainstream media has you on anytime soon. Let's keep pushing for it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and maybe this will embarrass them into doing it.
I hope so. We need more voices in this political process, that's for sure, instead of these corporate parties that are driving the show. Thanks so much, Howie. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time today.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And we've got a lot more to get to here on the show. My thanks to Howie Hawkins for joining us here on the show today. Great to have him and great to have additional guests here on the show. All right. When we come back, we're going to take a quick little break, and we've got more to get to on the stimulus. We're going to deep dive what's going on with the very latest on the stimulus plan and some early morning news on that, actually, that we're going to get to here in a moment. Well, I've been watching the chat. You guys were having your own little party on there, weren't you? I mean, it's so important for us to have these discussions, to have these other voices on to talk about these issues. And when you only have the mainstream media covering the Democrats and Republicans, and they're bought and sold by corporate elites, the only reason you're going to see MSNBC talking about Democrats is because they're controlled by Democrats. The only reason you're going to see Fox running with conservative news is because that's what their agenda is. So we don't have an agenda here. We're not bought and sold by any corporate masters. And so, hey, President Trump wants to come on this show, more than welcome to have him on here. Joe Biden wants to come on this show, more than happy to. Any of those folks want to come on this show, any libertarian candidates, et cetera, the People's Party, I would love to have all of them on the show. It's important to have these different voices and platforms out there, after all, so you can make an informed decision. So thank you guys. Thanks to Howie for spending some time with us this morning. I appreciate it. Yes. Thank you, guys. So be nice in the chat, guys.
Come on, man.
Yeah, be nice, man. Come on. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. Oh, I want to tell you about our sponsor today. If you saw the newsletter today, hey, you're going to get $80 in free groceries. $80 from HelloFresh. That's right. They're giving away, just for our audience, $80 in free groceries delivered right to your door. In fact, if you use HelloFresh, you save 40% on your grocery bill. You save 40% on grocery bills just by signing up with HelloFresh, because they're not wasting food. You get to pick the recipes you want based on the type of diet you have. If you're a vegan, etc., you can pick that. You're vegetarian, you want some meat, you're not tons of meat, whatever. You can pick and choose. You got 2 people in your family, 5 people in your family, you can pick and choose and pick the different recipes. So they are giving you $80 off right now with a coupon, just if you sign up and try it. So you can get free food sent to your house, and if you're not interested, you don't like it, then you never have to use it or do it again. But you should check it out, definitely. I'm a fan of them. It's great because you actually get the kids involved in cooking as well, and the family. So the recipe cards are super easy. They'll send a recipe card with all of the ingredients and nice pictures, and that's a great way to get your kids involved in cooking as well. So all you need to do is go to hellofresh.com/80investing. You have to do that, otherwise you won't get the $80 off, okay? The $80 coupon. So give it a shot. Go to hellofresh.com/80investing, and all of their food packaging is sustainable. It's all made from recycled material when they ship it to you, and they cut down on food waste too, which is fantastic, because each individual portions are cut up and separated, so you're not wasting all this additional food, throwing it in the garbage. And again, you're going to save a ton of money on your family's groceries by having these fresh ingredients delivered right to your door in meals that are designed for health in your family. So check them out. Go to hellofresh.com/80investing. My thanks to them for the support of this show. Okay. All right, we got all our sound bites here, and we are ready to go, I believe. Okay. All right, it's time to deep dive the stimulus on this Thursday, and we've got some major news overnight from the White House. And it appears that the White House, I predicted this, right, wanted to play good cop, bad cop with Senate Republicans. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So the White House, President Trump, basically saying, hey, we need a new stimulus plan. We need to do this. I support a larger one. Yeah, I'm game for that. That seems right. This compromise bill that we saw from the Problem Solvers Caucus. President Trump at the podium yesterday admitted that, yes, in fact, he would want it larger. Let's listen to President Trump, and this, I believe, really boxes in Mitch McConnell, who has not wanted to spend any money, and Senate Republicans now are going to be sitting there going, oh, crap, our president just called for additional spending beyond what we want. What are we going to do? We can't afford it. What am I going to do? I think this puts the ball firmly in their court. Well, here was the president yesterday at a press conference talking about fielding this question about the stimulus.
Mr. President, if I could ask you about coronavirus relief, do you support the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal that was put forward? Are you comfortable with the $500 billion for the states?
Something like that, yeah. I like the larger amount. I've said that. Some of the Republicans disagree, but I think I can convince them to go along with that because I like the larger number. I want to see people get money. I want to see, it wasn't their fault that this happened. It was China's fault, People say, oh, maybe you shouldn't say that. That's not nice. It was China's fault. So I'd like to see the larger number. Yeah, I would like to see it. There are some things I disagree with, but I'm sure they can be negotiating. Now, I heard Nancy Pelosi said she doesn't want to leave until we have an agreement. She's come a long way. That's great. If she said that, she's come a long way. I agree with her. We should have an agreement. People should be helped, and they should be helped as rapidly as possible, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's very important. So the Problem Solvers came up with, it's a group of people in Congress, as you know them all, I know them all, they're very good people. I guess you'd consider them dead center, but in many cases they're not. They're left, they're right, but they came up with this idea, and I think they're well on their way to suggesting some pretty good things, yeah.
So, and among those things that he said was the $1,200 stimulus checks. So direct payments to the American people. But I love those little digs at Republicans in there. I mean, there's some Republicans that don't support it, but I think I can convince them. I'm the great negotiator, after all. I mean, this surely puts the ball in the court of Republicans in the Senate right now to pass additional stimulus. So again, what the president said was, I like the larger amount. I've said that. Some of the Republicans disagree, but I think I can convince them to go along with that because I like the larger number. I want to see people get money. And it was encouraging because then we actually had Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi released a statement following what the president said, and they seemed to be excited about the president wanting to come to the table. They said, we are encouraged that after months of Senate Republicans insisting on shortchanging the massive needs of the American people, President Trump is now calling on Republicans to go for much higher numbers in the next coronavirus relief package. Pelosi and Schumer said in a statement, we look forward to hearing from the president's negotiators that they will finally meet us halfway with a bill that is equal to the massive health and economic crises gripping our nation. So who are these negotiators? Well, of course, it was Mark Meadows, White House Chief of Staff before, during these negotiations, and they were at loggerheads. They weren't really getting anywhere, and a lot of people were pointing to Mark Meadows as the problem in all of this, that he was the guy that was not willing to bend or move. But now he's getting a directive from the White House and President Trump, and this might be an opportunity for him during this election, don't you think? He gets to play good cop, bad cop, and he can say out on the campaign trail, hey, look, I'm telling Republicans to pass stimulus. You need it. I want to get direct checks in the American people's hands. It's a smart political move. If he's looking at these poll numbers, which are not good right now, the latest poll numbers have him down significantly across the board, and he is being outspent in television ads across the board. This could be the opportunity that President Trump needs to try to lift up some of these poll numbers in states like Florida, and Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, some of these battleground states, even Texas in play. So here is what Mark Meadows, though, had to say about this. He weighed in and seems like he's going to be the negotiator on this, and he's open to moving the ball forward.
But at 1.5 trillion, it's certainly higher than the number we had. But it's not a showstopper at this point, and just want to applaud the work of the Problem Solvers Caucus of staying engaged. And if the Speaker is serious about staying in until we get a deal, let's start the negotiations back and hopefully help those people that are hurting the most during this pandemic.
So the Speaker Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, has said that she wants to keep her House of Representatives members working, that they're not going to take a recess until they pass some sort of a stimulus. That's great. It's not entirely true or accurate. They'll still get to go home and campaign, but they will be given a 24-hour notice if they have to fly back to Washington in order to vote. So they'll still get to go home. They're still going to be campaigning on October 9th when they're supposed to have their vacation, basically. But nevertheless, Nancy Pelosi is saying we're going to stay here and duke this out. I think all eyes now on Mitch McConnell with this. He was on the Senate floor yesterday talking about, picking on Nancy Pelosi, basically calling her, what was he saying? He was calling her that she's playing Goldilocks with this, So I'm Mitch McConnell, and Nancy, she's just playing Goldilocks, Too hot, too cold, what is it? What is it? I'm done with him, though. I mean, here's a guy who, he's had all summer to get something done. Pressed pause on any kind of additional stimulus. And now that we're after Labor Day, wants to blame Democrats that we're up against an election wall when he had all summer in order to do this. And couldn't get any members of his very few members of his committee members together on this that would want to pass a massive stimulus package, because they had everything they needed. They already got all the corporate bailouts that they needed, and all of the big businesses and all Wall Street are fine. They're doing just fine. But the small businesses, the data out this morning that shows that these small businesses, 60% of business closures due to the coronavirus pandemic are now permanent, according to Yelp. This data was unbelievable. If you saw earlier in the show, we talked about some of these data points, but as of August 31st, 163,000 businesses have told Yelp that they have closed. That's a 23% increase since July. 97,000 businesses have closed permanently, and they're not reopening. These are done. These are done altogether. Yeah, we need help. And if you listened to Fed Chief Jerome Powell yesterday during his two-day meeting, and he gave his press conference and talked about additional stimulus is planned for and needed, and he also said that we need money for states and local governments. We just heard Howie Hawkins talking about that. It's not a blue state bailout. You have cities and states across this country that are red as they are blue that need money right now, and they're having to file for bankruptcy. They're having to furlough workers. They're having to close down basic city services. Like we talked with Howie, he said, look, you had pools that couldn't even open in New York because the states don't have money to pay the lifeguards. And so all these kids who would normally go and get exercise and play out in the sun and get some water, get cool off a little bit in the summer, no, closed. The local parks where they would do summer programs for kids, gone. I remember growing up in Pennsylvania, going down to Brenneman Park and doing summer programs where they would have the local kids that got some small salary from the city, and they would do crafts and we do exercises and things like that and play baseball and all of that stuff for a few hours. And so our parents could go off to work, earn an income. And now those services are gone. Those things are gone. Those are state funded. And those are the things that these states need. These programs that help families. Not only that, on the healthcare front and medical services, hospitals, firefighters, police departments, all of it being hemorrhaging right now. So President Trump didn't explicitly say that he wants this. You heard what he said there, but he says, for that $1.5 trillion plan that was unveiled on Tuesday. But he did say that he likes the larger number. So he wasn't going to give an exact number, but it's likely to come close to that 1.5 if they can get this thing through. Now, I did say that I would eat a houseplant if this thing passes in its entirety, and if this problem solvers bill actually goes through the Senate and gets passed into law. I will do it. I just don't see it in this form going through. Democrats have already poured cold water on it. Republicans have already said that it's too big, too expensive. So I don't know. I don't know what we're going to see. But it would be a miracle if we see something. President Trump, though, wants these $1,200 stimulus checks. So it's up to him now to twist the arm of his Republicans in the Senate to see if it gets through. But I don't know that everyone's on the same page on this. The White House wants to get something done. Nancy Pelosi wants to get something done, not sending her caucus members home for vacation. Mark Meadows seems to want to get something done. But Jared Kushner says he doesn't think we're going to see anything until probably after Election Day. I don't know if the White House is on the same page with this. Listen.
We do think that there is a need for another intervention. We've reached out to Congress. We've been negotiating. Again, as you know, in all negotiations, everyone's at no before they get to yes. There's a lot of posturing, some differences of opinion. But the hope is that we'll still get to a deal. It may have to happen after the election because there obviously are politics involved. This is Washington. But at the end of the day, President Trump will continue to fight for what he thinks the American economy needs to save American businesses and keep the consumer in a good place.
So there you go. That was Jared Kushner saying that probably won't happen until after the Election Day, which is what I've been saying. I mean, I just would be stunned if something gets through before Election Day, if there's any sort of consensus. Right now, according to my sources in Washington, it's all-out war. They're going to put on a good face, but behind the scenes, it's all-out war right now between these two parties. Having them come together on anything. I mean, I'll be shocked if they're able to come together on not having a government shutdown in the next few days. That's priority number one. And then to pass a stimulus, again, there is no vote scheduled on the House calendar for anything. So unless the White House is able to pressure Republicans in the Senate, they are not going to push anything through. Here's how it's going to work. Let me give you a little insight into how this works in Washington, because I've covered this for years. The White House will meet with Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, and they'll come up with some sort of framework. They're going to see if they can come to some sort of a compromise, okay? Somewhere close to 1.5, maybe 2 trillion, I don't know. And then, in order to make that work, the president's got to get on the phone, or Mark Meadows has to get on the phone and call Mitch McConnell. Say, here's what we've got. Can you get your caucus in line? Can you get those Republican senators to vote on this, yes or no? And Mitch McConnell's going to say, no way. They don't want to spend any money. Ted Cruz doesn't. Rand Paul doesn't. They don't want to spend any money on this. And so that's the amount of negotiating that's going to have to happen over the next few weeks, and I just don't see any of it coming through before Election Day. But again, I am glass half full. My wife made me this giant iced coffee today. It's like a fishbowl of coffee. Even this is half full. I consider this half full. So I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. So let me know in the chat below, do you think we're going to see a stimulus package pass before Election Day? let me know in the chat. And don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. If I brought you any value at all today, please, thank you so much for subscribing to the show and smashing that like button. And do not forget, folks, take advantage of our free newsletter. It's super simple to do. Just by going to morninginvest.com, you can sign up totally for free, delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning so you can be more informed. And like I said, we're giving away our new hoodies to all of the folks who referred other people and who won our contest. Check your email today because we're going to be reaching out to you to make sure we pick the right color. You can gray, blue, or black, and we need your size and your mailing address so we can get one of the new hoodies in time for fall sent out to you. So our thanks to you. What's Grover doing? Our thanks to you for supporting our show and supporting independent journalism. Friday Schofield just subscribed. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. What's Grover doing? Grover, you want to come up and say hi? Come here, buddy. Oh, this little guy. So this guy this morning woke me up at like 5 o'clock, barking like crazy. At what? Yeah, oh, you sleepy? I'm sorry. Did somebody wake you up super early this morning? Barking like crazy? Yeah? Yeah? You want to say hi to everyone? Yeah. He is now 7-month-old. A lot of people think he's a Chihuahua, but he is not. He is a mini pincher. He's a good guy. So he sits on my lap in the morning while working on the newsletter. Keeps me company while I'm putting the show together this morning. So he's sitting there asleep on my legs, stretched out on the chair. Yeah. Ow! Don't do biting me. So let me just check in on the chat. Thank you guys for watching today. You know, I think, guys, you know, I saw a lot of hate about. I saw a lot of hate in there, in the chat today about. Oh, I'm going to tune out. I don't want to listen to Howie. I want to go. You know, and I get it. You know, that's. I want to say this about politics. You know. Thank you, Lori. Thank you for being so kind. Lori said the show sucked. Well, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that I put so much work into it for you. You think, why don't you do your own show? It's very kind of you. So I'm just reading the chat here. Why does Shane just keep saying Alex Jones over and over again? You know, he's 7 months old now. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you for saying this is a great show. Look, you know, we hear different voices on this show. This is not a show for what you're used to seeing on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox. It's not. And if you want another show like that, I mean, there's plenty of shows like that, plenty of channels like that. This guy does. Yeah, don't be a D. So, Laura, I'm just curious, when you say you didn't like the show, what was it about the show? You had our complete news headlines this morning off the top. Did a full stimulus update on all the latest news on the stimulus. Interviewed a presidential candidate on the show today to talk about wildfires, what the Democrats are doing to get him thrown, with the Green Party thrown off the ballot in multiple states. Updates on the wildfires. I think it's a pretty good show. It's a show I'd watch. So thank you for all of your support. No, I don't know what. Grover was upset about that comment. Yeah, I don't know. This morning Grover was crazy. He was up at 5 and he was barking like crazy, running around the house. I opened up the balcony door. There's nothing. I don't know what he heard. Nothing. Maybe it's the new moon. Maybe he was howling at the new moon. Maybe something in the atmosphere, right? Something astrological. I don't know. You know, let me just give you a little thoughts. This is sort of our after show. I think about the stories that I can cover on the show, right? And let's say if I just go to Let me just give you an example of the type of crap that we're up against in this society. Let me just give you an example here. Okay, so this is the kind of crap that we mostly get from the mainstream media. I'm going to show you what to get this pulled up here. And what I try to do here is give you the stories that I think matter. We also have to have some fun, but the thing is that matter to you. So this is an example here. Like, this is like the front page of CNN.com right now, right? All Trump. Trump contradicts this, and this. That's all you're going to see, right? Let's look at some other corporate media sites, shall we? Just to give an example of what kind of stuff we're up against. Let's take a look at this, see what this is, if this is any different. Can't even find it. Oop, that's why. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, here we go. And then this is like, looking over here. Biden or no peace, right? So it's like, I mean, this is what we're up against, right, folks? On the one side, you've got this CNN wall-to-wall coverage here of Trump isn't hiding why he's interfering with the vaccine. Trump contradicts and demeans the CDC director. CNN reporter fires back at White House press secretary, right? Those are all the top stories. And then over here, Biden or no peace? Attorney General rips Democrats. Graham says Mueller won't agree to testify. CNN editor deletes COVID tweet. I mean, this is the crap. Is this helping you at all? Is this helping you at all? And then the stuff I'm covering today, talking about businesses businesses going under. Latest on COVID-19, what states are the hardest hit right now? Looking what's up, happening with the stimulus. Having a Green Party presidential candidate on the show to talk about the Green Party's platform. You're not going to see that over here on CNN. You see that anywhere over here? No, you're not. You're not going to see it over here. Just for giggles, I want to see if I can pull up MSNBC's website. This is the kind of stuff, though, you got to deal with. So when you watch these cable channels, just remember who's paying for all that. These corporate elites. Let's take a look at MSNBC. Here we go. Make Trump fire you. Dr. Fauci. Barr reportedly tells prosecutors to charge protesters with sedition. Trump blames blue states for coronavirus death toll. I literally, when you read that kind of stuff, you start to feel dumber, don't you? I mean, it's just like an echo chamber. Nothing that's bringing us together as a country, where we can find some common ground on policy issues. We can agree, we can disagree on meaningful policy issues. We can have a debate, but right now we're so polarized, we're so separated. By the way, everyone needs to watch this documentary. It just rolled out on Netflix. You've got to watch it. Please, please, please do me a favor and watch it tonight if you can. It's called the Social Dilemma, I believe is the name of it. How many of you have already seen it? Everyone's talking about it. It's beautifully produced. Very good job. I think that's what it's called, The Social Dilemma? Yes. The Social Dilemma on Netflix. And it's about, our addiction to social media, how we interact with people now is so polarized because of the news feeds on Facebook, et cetera, are designed, of course, to make sure that you are not seeing the same thing as your husband or wife or whatever. It's totally tailored to you, of course. And so if they know that anti-Trump stuff makes you excited, they're going to keep sending more of that to you. If they know that they're never going to send you just like a fair and balanced view of the world. It's going to be highly targeted for you. But anyway, watch this. It's a fascinating movie called The Social Dilemma. Check it out tonight if you can on Netflix. And let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it tomorrow on the show. And we're going to actually try to have Tristan Harris. He's in the film. He's done, TED Talks and so forth. He's going to be on. His work really has been pushing the industry to try to change, to get this stuff out of our feeds, stuff away from our kids that's toxic. So I'm going to try to have Tristan here on the show. I've reached out to him. It'd be great if we can get him on the show. So that's a little behind the scenes planning here on the show. Too many things going on up here. Here's my problem. So I've got this. So I've got the one of these is a. I'll show you my setup here. I'm going to take Grover Cam away from him for a second. No, I can do it over here. So, so I've got the Mac over here. So here it is. The Social Dilemma is the name of the movie. But I've got the widescreen Mac over here, and I've got this keyboard with this trackpad, which controls that screen. Then I've got this mouse and this keyboard, which controls this whole setup on the PC, which is our broadcast software. And so I'm constantly like, oh, is it this mouse? Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? Going between screens. It's not that easy. So as soon as Philip, my director, is fully set up, I'm super excited about it as our producer and director. Going to be able to call the shots and be able to handle all of those pieces of the show, which is going to be great. So we've got our whole full graphics and everything is coming in the next week. I'm super excited about it. This whole show is going to get bigger and better, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So thanks to all of you who've been here since the very beginning. You've been here for a few months. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Man, chat is flying by right now. How many of you guys joined the channel today? Did we have any new channel members sign up today? If you want to become a channel member, if you see people in the chat that have a little picture of Grover or some of these other emotes that they're able to get, you can get those for becoming a channel member when you sign up. I think it was the new moon, Queen said. I think it was the new moon that made him do that. He's a dog. They howl. Maybe. Yeah, it's just so weird. Like, it was, and that new moon like happened around that time of the morning. It was like 4 or 5 in the morning, I think. Lisa Lee says, good morning, handsome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Very kind. Grover's barking at the haters. Lisa Beltran says, Trump is a wannabe dictator. He's an idiot. Great show. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Very kind, Mike Smith. When you start your show, I'll watch so I can chime in. Thank you so much, White Tiger. Robin King, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, who's a new channel member? Is that a new channel member? Carol Anderson, thank you so much for becoming a channel member. Anthony Clark says, everything Clayton is saying is true. I walk out of my apartment with a mask on. I see people wearing masks, seeing businesses boarded up, seeing homelessness in the Northeast Welsh Road in Philadelphia, my home city of Philadelphia. Schumer is on the Senate floor ripping President Trump apart. Wouldn't be surprised. Well, yeah, that's because, I mean, he was ripping, he was also ripping Alex Azar, the HHS secretary, apart over his coronavirus response, asking him to resign. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. I have got a lot to complete for the rest of the day, and I've got to get to work on that, building this channel. You know, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you want to hear more of on this show? Let me know. You know, what I can do is I'm happy to put up, what I can do is I can build a form that you guys can type out. Let me know, or just let me know in the comments, not here in the chat because it'll zip by. But wait, and then when this is on the replay, go ahead into the comments section and just let me know what you would like to hear more of on this show, be covered more on this show, what would help you out. You know, I built this show for you to grow financially, to not be bought and sold by these big corporate elites, and to help educate you around your personal finances, the things that you're not going to learn from listening to these big banks and CNBC and otherwise. That's what this show is all about. My goal is to empower you and to cut through the noise. You know, this is not a corporate show. So let me know what you would love more coverage of. And I'm happy to include that in the show as I come up with different segment ideas and doing as much as I can. I try. So thank you guys so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. Kevin Kester said, I've had enough. You made fun of those people in the Target, but don't condemn those people out destroying the country? Sure I did. Where have you been, Kevin? First of all, don't fall for the propaganda on these protests. They've been overwhelmingly, the data is in on this, they've been overwhelmingly peaceful. Overwhelmingly. But like 97%, according to the data, is that these protests were almost universally peaceful. And then there were a few protests that got out of hand where they destroyed people's businesses, destroyed cars, shot people, threw rocks. People came in from out of town and destroyed stuff. That's awful. That's no way to protest. That's no way to have your voice heard, to destroy people's property. I will absolutely condemn that. I have here on the show. It's horrible. And those people should be locked up. I mean, there are people like Martin Luther King who would be, you know, probably rolling over in his grave to see that type of behavior. So absolutely condemned. But yeah, I'm going to mock these people. This is horrible behavior. These kids go to a Target and roll through this Target telling everyone to take off their masks. These, take your masks off, everybody, take your masks off. We're not going to take it. They're blasting Twisted Sister. We're not going to take it. Yeah, take your masks off. We're not going to take it anymore. Your life is so hard. Your life is so hard, I bet, huh? Yeah. Yeah, let's lead by example. Take off your masks.
Come on, man.
I'm an equal opportunity offender. People that want to burn down buildings and loot, shoot protesters, yeah, awful. Should go to prison. Idiots that walk through a Target encouraging people to take off their masks. There's been plenty of people who've watched this show who will tell us in the comments that they've lost a family member, they have a relative that's died from COVID. I've had multiple friends who've gotten sick. One of them passed away. One of my former coworkers at Fox, she lost both of her parents at nursing homes to COVID. Both of her parents. So yeah, run through a Target without masks on and encouraging other people to do that. Great. Great. You know, there is Darwinism. It's Darwinism at its finest. Ridiculous. All right, that does it for me. I'm gonna get too fired up. I care too much. I am going to duck out of the show today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hey, don't forget, if you've got an iPhone or an iPad or any of those devices, go update today because the software is out. Just go to General Settings and click Software Update. Make sure it's plugged into a power and update because there's a lot of privacy stuff in there. There's a lot of new updates in that will protect you against companies tracking you. It'll actually tell you if someone's using your camera. Seriously, a little orange light will pop up on your iPhone to show you that the app that you're currently using is secretly recording you. So TikTok didn't like that. No, they didn't. So Apple put a number of different privacy things in place. So update it, if for no other reason than you care about your privacy. iOS 14 is out for Apple Watch, for your iPad, your iPhone, if you are an iOS user. There you go. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.